Over a period of 2 decades, Alfred Hitchcock set 3 of his landmark movies right here.
In Santa Rosa, California.
Santa Rosa?
Bodega Bay. He goes there every weekend.
Scary?
Yeah. Oh, hell yes.
The best way to commit a murder. I know.
Hitchcock was a resident of the San Francisco Bay Area. They did a family outing in the 50s. And Hitchcock was staring at the Golden Gate Bridge and he said, "Now this is a location for a murder mystery."
While the director himself has been gone for 3 decades,
His ghost. Hitchcock's still here.
If you want to walk in the footsteps of Hitchcock, you can find some great sites that are still existing today.
I'm Brian Hackney, and tonight, a very special Eye on the Bay as we follow Alfred Hitchcock step by step through the Bay Area.
You imagine Jimmy Stewart walking right past you. It's just like the way you see it in the movie.
We'll learn about Hitchcock from his granddaughter.
First of all, he was not scary.
We'll see never-before published photographs. And the only surviving star from his first Bay Area film will talk on television for the first time.
Well, what's going on here?
I just disappeared.
So come along for a road trip into Hitchcock's past and present. And we'll begin with what Hitchcock said was his own favorite film. You ready? We'll take a trip 50 miles north and 70 years back in time to the summer of 1942, the moment when Alfred Hitchcock did something almost unheard of in a small Sonoma County town.
He shot a movie called Shadow of a Doubt, which is really a gem of the Hitchcock films. He decided to actually build his film around a small town, and he picked Santa Rosa.
That's right, Santa Rosa.
See, instead of building a small town on a Hollywood set, Hitchcock simply used a small town and this house that was already built. And shooting on location was highly unusual at the time. But then these were highly unusual times.
It was shot during World War II, and so there were wartime restrictions on the film. And so Hitchcock had to find a way to get around a paltry budget of $3,000. Instead of building a set in Hollywood, he decided to actually build his film around a small town.
Hello, Ann. Bet you don't remember me.
I remember you sort of. You look different.
He even cast the daughter of a Santa Rosa grocer, Edna May Wonacott.
Hello. You must be trying to hide or something.
She did a great job.
She did a great job.
So 70 years after filming, the stage is still set.
Railroad Square, still in all its glory, sitting there today. There's a clock tower that you can see very prominently in a lot of the scenes in Santa Rosa, and that's still there.
The players, Joseph Cotten, Teresa Wright, Henry Travers, Edna May,
She makes no allowance for science.
all had to live somewhere.
And this house is a central part of the plot. Hitchcock reputedly drove all the streets of Santa Rosa to find the perfect house, and he selected this house initially on his survey. 904 McDonald Avenue is right in the middle of the residential district of Santa Rosa. It's a beautiful and wonderfully preserved and restored house from film history.
Many things didn't survive. That spectacular church is now a parking garage. Where the Santa Rosa Arch was, there's no sign of the sign. Henry Travers, Joseph Cotten, Teresa Wright, all have passed on. But one precious element of that moment in time survives.
Well, I am the only one alive.
Is that you? I can't believe it. Is it you? It's so nice to see you. How wonderful. We brought these for you from Channel 5.
Oh, how beautiful.
You've already got an arm. How nice to see you. The child star is now a great-grandmother in the Arizona desert. You've still got your script.
Oh, yes, I have the original script.
Newton's residence, and Newton speaking.
The Newton's residence, and Newton speaking.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Henderson. This is Anne.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Henderson. This is Anne. Mother isn't home yet. A telegram. Oh, gosh.
I don't see a pencil, so maybe she better call you back.
Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
This is the first time you've read these lines in 70 years.
Oh, yeah.
10-year-old Edna May was standing at this intersection in downtown Santa Rosa when she suddenly noticed two men.
And they were looking at the bank and the different buildings. And I wondered what they were doing. So I stood there pretty close to them, trying to see what he was writing down. So pretty soon he looked at me. And I thought, oh dear. And it was Alfred Hitchcock and Jack Skirball. And they said, we are in Santa Rosa, we're going to make a movie here. Would you like to be in the movie? Oh, I said, I'd love to be in the movie. And I ran in the house and hit the front door and I said, Mother, there's some men that want me to be in a movie.
Had you acted before?
Never. Oh, no. After the movie was over, there were girls all over town standing at bus stops with glasses and pigtails.
Within 24 hours, Edna May was on the train for a Hollywood screen test. How did you find out that you had gotten the part?
Probably my mother told me.
What was the atmosphere on the set like?
We had such a good time. You felt like you had known them all your lives. He was a very serious man. He was very into what he was doing. It was different when you weren't on the set with him. He was more relaxed.
It looked like you were having some fun with it.
We had a lot of fun. I wouldn't have given up what I had through those movie days for $1 million. It was great.
Hit one, sister. Come on, throw it.
But after 7 films, including Bells of St. Mary's with Ingrid Bergman, Edna May did give it up.
And all I ever wanted out of life was to get married and have 4 kids. I was married and I was pregnant with the first one, and I thought, now's the time to stop. I want to be home with my kids. So I quit. I just disappeared.
In the 60 years since, Edna May raised 3 boys and now lives the peaceful life of a great-grandmother in the Arizona desert, 7 decades removed from what Hitchcock called his favorite film.
I can't believe that I could remember this clearly. That happened 70 years ago, to tell you the truth.
So, did Edna May find fulfillment by leaving Hollywood behind and raising a family of her own?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
In other words, beyond the shadow of a doubt.
The men who cover the Capitol scene are regaled by Alfred Hitchcock, who has some comments about his latest picture.
The title is quite short, just 2 words. There were 3, but we cut the first word for and call it simply The Birds.
It's the end of the world.
It's one of my favorite movies is The Birds.
It's the end of the world.
It was regarded as one of the most terrifying films ever made. And I remember just being frightened.
Exactly 50 years ago, the screaming stopped and the film crews all left the tiny town of Vertigo. But Hitchcock? He's still here.
That's a full-size replica of Alfred Hitchcock. He's a work in progress.
Michael Fahmy owns the Bodega Country Store and
games, photographs, wine, historical documents.
Alfred Hitchcock earrings? Michael's obviously a real bird's brain.
And it's becoming quite the obsession, and I'm a little wacko about that.
They said when you got here the whole thing started. I think you're the cause of all this.
It was Hitchcock's last great movie, and when his crew arrived to begin filming in March of 1962, Hitchcock gave an interview to columnist Herb Caen.
He asked the following question: "It is one of the most scary films that you've ever made. Is that true?" And Hitchcock said, "Oh, indubitably. I paid for it myself, and I'm terrified of losing all my money."
Step one, just follow along.
Where did he go?
Bodega Bay. He goes there every weekend.
Bodega Bay. Where's that?
Up the coast about 60 miles north of here. It's an hour and a half by freeway or 2 hours if you take the coast highway.
Once in Bodega, a right-hand turn up Bodega Lane takes us to an old schoolhouse Hitchcock picked for a very spooky reason.
Alfred Hitchcock was a man who believed in ghosts, and the building is a designated classic haunt.
We know of at least one ghost.
She walks down and goes and sits down, and the birds gather. And then...
Now, as if this weren't bad enough, Hitchcock now makes one town out of two, Bodega and Bodega Bay, which are 7 miles apart.
And in one scene, you're in Bodega, and the camera switches, and you see the coast. You see them running down what's actually called Taylor Street in Bodega Bay.
Hitchcock's granddaughter, Terry Karuba, was actually at the shoot that day.
The birds were attached to the kids' hands. Most of them were fake. And so when they ran, they would go like this, and so the birds would be look like they were hitting their head.
Don't they ever stop migrating?
Another trick showed birds in the Bodega skies that were actually filmed 60 miles away, circling, what else? The San Francisco dump.
Where are they heading?
The birds were then grafted onto the background whenever they needed them.
Something like this happened in Santa Cruz last year.
He heard that there was a real-life attack, and he knew he wanted to put that into his film, and in fact he does.
That's right, sir. I recall it.
That conversation takes place in what was once a small diner.
The Tides restaurant was the center or heart of Bodega Bay in the movie.
Still is, actually, except it is vastly expanded. Now, back in the day, the owner, Mitch Zankich, didn't charge Hitchcock a dime for shooting on the premises. All Mitch wanted was his 15 minutes of fame.
The owner of the Tides gets a cameo appearance, and he also gets a line in the film.
And that happens in this crucial sequence, which took place right there.
As Melanie is attacked by a bird while in a boat, he comes running down and asks Rod Taylor, what happened?
What happened, Mitch?
Gull hit her.
A gull?
That's his big moment.
In the end, Hitchcock didn't lose money. He ended up making 5 times as much as it cost him to produce the film. He also made one more thing, a lasting impression.
Just ask the tourist bureau in Bodega and Bodega Bay. Apparently 10,000 tourists come looking for Hitchcock sites every year.
50 years after filming wrapped here, Bodega is still very much for the birds.
Hitchcock felt that it was his masterpiece. It actually came out with mixed reviews by the critics and very poor showings at the box office.
Well, fasten your seatbelt as we recount the filming of Vertigo.
He always knew that he wanted to use the Golden Gate Bridge in a film and use San Francisco. San Francisco became a co-star in the movie.
Well, San Francisco's changed. Things that spell San Francisco to me are disappearing fast.
It's a time capsule of San Francisco in the 50s and made me wanted to go visit all the scenes I could.
Directing our ride along is Aaron Leventhal, co-author of the amazing Footsteps in the Fog. And step 1, Nob Hill now and then. I mean, one of the great things about this tour, many things have changed. Many things like that have stayed the same.
That's right, top of Nob Hill. This is San Francisco wealth.
Yeah, as opposed to where Jimmy Stewart is living.
Through the curvy part of Lombard Street. curviest road in America.
I didn't know your address, but I had a landmark. I remembered Coit Tower.
And when we get off that curvy part of Lombard...
Well, we had another one of the famous sites in the Hitchcock tour of San Francisco.
You left your door open.
The apartment that Scotty uses,
yeah,
Jimmy
that's it.
Stewart, in the movie Vertigo. It's not something that's very grand because he's a detective. He's a bachelor, so it can't be something fancy.
Well, you've nothing to apologize for.
This is a great way to see San Francisco.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Vertigo in so many ways was a Valentine to the city. Hitchcock was a real fan and was passionate about living in this area. And its beautiful locations and vistas like the Palace of Legion of Honor.
And that's where the next critical scene takes place.
Yep.
This spot that Jimmy Stewart strides purposefully up this wide pavement, right?
That's right.
We could reconstruct that.
Let's try it.
Do we look like Jimmy Stewart?
Absolutely.
We join the action as Jimmy Stewart turns toward the Golden Gate in 1957, and we follow now and take the next step at Fort Point.
Well, it's got so much history. It's actually a military installation that's never seen actual action, but it's been on active duty between the Civil War and World War II. There's great shots to be had, and this, of course, is one of the best.
But at this point in the film, everything heads south.
100 miles south of San Francisco, there's an old Spanish mission.
Initially, there was talk that he wasn't going to use Mission San Juan Bautista.
But in October 1957, Hitchcock and crew did come to town.
And today, watching the film, you can't imagine that movie without Mission San Juan Bautista.
The Watsonville newspaper was there too. The photographs they took that day are being seen here for the first time. They were all rescued by Hollister historian Sandy Lydon.
There's one of my favorites. There's a scene where she comes up to the door and then pulls it and opens it to run into the church. And so she's standing in the archway just right by the door, and she's checking her fingernails. Yes. I mean, it's just perfect. Jimmy Stewart shaving.
And Hitchcock standing right next to him, but appears giving directions to the guy who's holding the mirror.
Of course, the filming attracted a lot of the locals. How'd you hear about it?
Around town, you know, everybody in town knew it. And I was working just outside of town at the plant here. And so I come up at lunchtime and thought, well, I'll come up and see all the stars and the director and Alfred Hitchcock and so on.
And who'd you see?
Not a soul. I miss seeing Hitchcock. I miss seeing
Jimmy
Stewart.
Yeah.
I miss seeing Novak. I didn't see anybody.
Dad, I'm really sorry about that. This is my dad.
Well, that's the way life goes.
But there is some good news.
San Juan has not changed at all.
So even if you weren't there, you can recreate it.
Where are you now?
Here with you.
And it's all real. Here's your gray horse.
And there's your horse now, just kind of tucked into a corner of the stables.
San Juan has not changed at all. It hasn't changed. I mean, if you want to shoot a period movie, this is a perfect place to do it.
And Hitch's perfect place to take a break after the shoot, we'll show it to you after a different kind of break. When you turn into Point Lobos, south of Carmel, you're driving the same road filmed in 1940 for Hitchcock's Rebecca. That same year, he bought this retreat in nearby Scotts Valley. How often would they actually come here?
I would say probably at least once or twice a month they were here. This was the place that they really relaxed. They loved this house.
Hitchcock himself made a few final stops in the Bay Area. This one at the Amtrak station in San Jose for the movie Marnie. He retired in 1976 and was overlooked for a knighthood until he was 80.
I suppose it was a matter of carelessness.
4 months later, Alfred Hitchcock died. But has he ever really gone?
His work has lived on.
His fingerprints are all over this place. And he's here because of the power of art and the power of film. He's still hovering. his ghost. Hitchcock's still here.
That was a heartwarming little story, wasn't it?
Goodbye.